And this is one example, but the number of examples that have been published in the last few years is staggering. So more and more diseases are associated to shift in the microbiota. And it's staggering and almost ridiculous at the same time, because there's not a day you can open a journal where you don't see a paper on this microbiome shift linked to disease X or Y. And the list of diseases is becoming very broad. It's not only the intestinal diseases, such as Crohn's disease or colitis ulcerosa or colon cancer or these kind of things, but also metabolic diseases, diabetes, obesity, metabolic syndrome, atherosclerosis, or anything like that. But then even beyond that, we also have autoimmune diseases popping in. So we have things like arthritis, also things like asthma, allergy are being associated now, and even neurodegenerative diseases, so like Parkinson's been hovering around these days. Things like autism is more and more evidence that there's an association there. So it's becoming very, very interesting and very exciting, and it's also a big challenge now to try to understand how changes in your intestinal microbiome affect or are at least associated to all of these different diseases all over your body. But it emphasizes the importance or the close relationship we have with this. I always call it an extra organ. It's 1.5 kilos. It's the size of your brain, right? So it's an extra organ you're carrying around, and it's in constant contact through the immune system, through various metabolites, through various other ways with the rest of our body. Anyway, so I think for many of these diseases, we now find we can also analyze that microbiota, and we can think, well, can we then go to diagnostics from this, right? You go to the doctor, you don't give a blood sample, but you give a stool sample. Or in the clinical context, you work from biopsy samples. Right? That's what we do that as well. So that we can see, can we use this for diagnostics or in the future prognostics of certain diseases? And we do develop techniques also to find those things and to find those markers, as you've seen in the previous slide and previous presentation, where we can have very good predictive markers for, diagnostic markers for very many diseases. We have very good predictive power for Crohn's, colitis, diabetes, obesity, much better than the genetics has ever had. Now, at the same time, so this was the enthusiastic part of this slide. Now I'm going to also have the reality part of this slide. These cohorts are small. This is tens, maximum hundreds of individuals. The genetics-based markers are based on thousands, 10,000s of individuals, right? And with multi-center studies, and if you have a marker here in Belgium, does it also work in Croatia and in the US and in China, right? And our field is very young. And so that is only starting now. So I'm sure that these numbers will go down. But what I do think is that there will be some left, and there will be some predictive power left, diagnostic power left. I always make the mistake because that's where we want to go. Right? We want to be predicting: are you at risk of developing type 2 diabetes? And can we predict the exact age, date, and hour when you will be become diabetic? Right? That's the ultimate goal. And we also must not forget that association doesn't mean causality. It's not because your gut flora is changed when you're a Crohn's patient that this change causes Crohn's disease. Right? That is a very important mistake we should avoid making. It doesn't mean we can't use it for diagnostics, right? But for mechanisms and understanding, we have to be careful not to make that jump too rapidly. At the same time, there's more and more evidence for multiple diseases that there is causality. One example is in obesity. We find that this is not my experiment, but if you take the intestinal flora of an obese mouse model and you transplant that into a germ-free mouse, which is a mouse without any microbiota, without any flora, if you do that transplantation, that germ-free mouse becomes obese. So you're transplanting the phenotype, just like the mice in the cage that were eating each other's pellet. We're transplanting the phenotype together with the flora. So that's already a very strong indication for causality. Another example, type 2 diabetes. So that we did a big study together with the BGI in Shenzhen at finding markers for type 2 diabetes. And we found them. And we found that the flora is sort of dysbiotic, so not completely stable. However, what was recently published was that if you take the flora of healthy individuals, human individuals, and you transplant that into people that have type 2 diabetes, you can increase their insulin sensitivity. Basically, you can milden their phenotype. So we can think of flora modulation, in this case by the most extreme form, namely transplantation, flora modulation as a treatment for maybe some of these diseases. We don't know the mechanism. We have no clue. But there seems to be something doable there, something actionable there. And that's the big advantage over genetics. Because in genetics, if you have your gene, you have your mutation, from that to an action, a treatment, that road is very long. Here, that road could be a lot faster.